I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. We have a special guest here today, Michael League from Snarky Puppy. Great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're honored that you would take time out of your busy schedule. You're passing through from Ann Arbor down to Indy, right? Indianapolis.
Yeah, it's on the way. No problem
Big
at all.
show tonight?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we're St. Patrick's Day, so it should be wild at the Vogue.
Right, and a big snowstorm.
Yes. Yeah, if we make it. Yeah.
It's all these things converging.
Yeah.
So you got a few more dates, and then you're headed to Australia and the Far East, and you guys are covering the world.
Yeah.
How much longer are you out on tour for?
Well, this is just like a little weekend. So it's just 2 gigs, just Ann Arbor and Indy, and then we leave April 4th, and I think we come back June 6th. So it's like 2 solid months in Japan, New Zealand, Australia, and Europe.
Nice. Nice. Well, that's going to be great.
Yeah.
That's going to be great.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you, the band is, I guess you'd say, a collective of 25 to 40, I see different numbers.
There's a lot.
A whole lot of people there.
Too many people, yeah.
Do you, on a tour like that, do you have the same personnel through the whole tour, or does it shift as you're going through the tour?
We kind of change it out at certain moments. So if we switch continents, maybe 2 or 3 guys will it's kind of like a line change in hockey or something, you know?
Right.
So we just kind of like shift guys in and out just to make sure that everybody gets to play, and also that everybody stays happy and comfortable. And you know, it can be a lot to be 8 or 9 weeks in a bus or on planes with the same group of people doing the same thing every day. So we try to kind of keep the energy fresh.
Mm-hmm. Now, I've read that you don't do a full set list, that you'll start out with a few songs planned and then kind of call things as you go.
Yeah.
How do you keep that all straight when you have different players? Because I assume different players are different songs, or does everybody play on everything, or how does that work?
No, everyone plays on every song, but the guys are all kind of, well, some of them are actually producers in their own rights, but they all think like producers when they're playing. So there will be some songs, you know, in which a guy plays 30% of it or 90% of it, depending on what's the most musically appropriate thing. Mm-hmm. So they're orchestrated and arranged in such a way that the audience isn't just getting pummeled by full orchestration the whole time, you know?
Right.
But yeah, we start with, I mean, I always write a full set list and then I ditch it by like the 2nd or 3rd song. Because you think it's going to go some way and the crowd reacts to certain things, or the room sounds a certain kind of way, and you realize that certain kind of songs won't work as well as others, and we try to stay adaptable.
Mm-hmm. With the, I guess at this point you'd have to say the immense body of work that you've created with the band, how do you keep that whole catalog in your head, or do you just have a selection that you're choosing from?
I don't know. I guess I never thought about that. I think I'm like a very OCD kind of person and kind of compartmentalized thinker, even though I'm also very easily distracted and kind of tangential, but I just think about it as records. So I like to go on stage with like a list of all the songs that I'm interested in playing that night and that I can just kind of pull from in the moment, you know, depending on what just happened. Because also it's like, you never know what's going to happen with this band because we play each song differently every night. So maybe we'll be playing a tune that normally there's a drum solo in it, and then the keyboard player takes it, and then it takes us in a weird direction, and I want to keep going in that direction with the next song. Mm-hmm. Fulfill that direction. So then I choose another song that's kind of on the list. So, yeah.
Right. How do you manage that live, having where everyone thinks there's going to be a drum solo, suddenly there's a keyboard solo? Does somebody cue that? Do you cue that? How does that coordinated?
Yeah, I guess I'm the one that kind of gives cues. I mean, some solos are pretty built in, but very rarely, maybe 1 in 10 is like it has to be a keyboard solo or something, you know? Mm-hmm. But I mean, I guess I kind of think of myself as like an instigator, you know? Right. Kind of like, I don't dictate things, but I kind of push things in certain directions and just kind of sit back and see what happens. Or I observe what is already happening and kind of make decisions based on that. Sometimes if we're in a groove and the drummer and the horns are playing something that I feel like would sound great just on their own, then I'll pull the rest of the band out and just break it down to those 2 kind of sections, and then maybe someone will have an idea and then they'll contribute it. And so it's very fluid and very spontaneous, and it used to be a disaster. But now it's better, you know, because we've just spent so much time together. We understand each other very, very well, so it ends up coming off like we have it planned sometimes.
Right. Right.
Sometimes it's still a disaster.
Do you give everyone like a cheat sheet of hand signals when I do this?
We only have 2 cues.
Yeah.
No, don't go on to the next section, and yes, go on to the next section. That's it.
That's it?
Yeah. This, I guess, means we're ending. I don't know. I mean, yeah, we don't have like a system.
You've just done it enough times that everyone
Yeah,
kinda
I can
knows
just
it.
look at people and they'll know I'm about to ask them to stop playing or something, or to start playing.
Right, right. So at this point, your long list of slash titles includes bassist, composer, record company mogul, festival
There are no
promoter,
record company moguls anymore.
festival promoter. The list
Yeah.
is really long. How do you? What do you think is your primary thrust at this point in your career?
Oh man. I don't know that there is a primary one. That's the curse of being a musician in 2017 is
Mm-hmm.
I get, sometimes I think I just produced a record for David Crosby and we talk a lot about like how things were, And it's just crazy to imagine that this guy grew up in a time when all you had to do was just be good at music and you could just do that.
Right.
And you didn't have to make posters, and you didn't have to do social media blasts, and you didn't have to kind of wear every hat. You didn't have to be your own kind of manager. And the demands on being a modern musician are very intense,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where it's really difficult to just find the time to improve your craft. I'm grateful that I had 4 years of college where my focus was just like my craft, I kind of like lean on those years every day when I play, because I don't have time to practice anymore.
Right. Right.
So for me, yeah, it's all a big thing. And I also see our role, Snarky Puppy and Ground Up, my record label, and and me personally, I see our role in the music world as maybe something, I don't want to say beyond, because I don't want to make it sound like it's more important, but just something that's separate from the music itself also.
Mm-hmm.
Just like in terms of just kind of inspiring people to do things that they love.
Right.
And to be passionate about the things that they love, and it doesn't even have to be music, but I hope on a musical level we're inspiring musicians to like, maybe they would have taken a gig that doesn't satisfy them creatively, but maybe we're part of a group of inspiration that would make them say, no, I want to do music that means something to me, because to me music is like, it's like food in many ways, but food can nourish you even if it's not well made and doesn't taste good and not organic or whatever. It still will get you through the day. But music for me, it's like, if there's no inspiration, if there's no creativity, if there's not some kind of meaning or authenticity or genuine intent behind it, it's like, it doesn't nourish you in any way.
Right.
And the more music that we have that has that kind of benevolent intent behind it, I think the more it fosters a scene of creative music, and that fosters an audience for creative music, and it's kind of this beautiful circle.
Right.
Instead of a vicious cycle, it's like, it's the opposite. And so I want to hopefully be a contributor to that.
Mm-hmm.
That group, and so that's why we have a music festival, and that's why we have a record label. Even though this is the stupidest time in the world to have a record label, that's when we decided to do it.
Right.
Just to kind of like help just kind of like create some kind of positivity, and especially with what's happening in the world right now, it's like I think that positivity is a good thing.
Yeah. Right. Right. You never have too much of that.
No.
Right.
No.
So you've mentioned, speaking of record labels and distribution, that you're working on or thinking about a new distribution system, possibly this year, next year, something you're pushing forward. Is there more you can tell us about that, or is that still behind the curtain?
You did your research for this interview.
Well, you want to know what you're talking about, right?
Wow. I didn't even realize I'd mentioned that publicly. Yeah, we are Ground Up Music, which I founded like 7 years ago, is a record label, but more than that, it's kind of like a curation group. I like to think of it as like your friend that you can call and say, hey man, what record should I check out this week? Mm-hmm. And we say, Band of Magda, or Charlie Hunter or Becca Stevens or Michelle Willis or David Crosby or whatever. And I think the plan is to take that to the next level because, right now we're spending all of our time and energy doing album releases, but people have stopped buying albums. I still don't feel good about throwing in the towel on that because to me an album is a sacred thing. And now with like kind of a mild resurgence in vinyl, I feel like the album will stick around, especially in like creative forms of music, like non-mainstream. Not to say that mainstream is not creative, but you know what I mean, like
Sure.
niche genres. But what I would like to do is take it to the next level, and so we're going to kind of build this interface that's subscription based, kind of like a streaming service, but different from all the streaming services. We're actually going to pay our artists.
Nice.
So the idea is to provide exclusive content throughout the world of music, be it like a filmed performance or an interview or a podcast or like a travel series or a writing on improvisation or something, just like kind of like create a Disneyland for people who love music.
Sure.
And provide content to them that they can't get anywhere else, because with our network of connections through our gigantic ensemble and organization and our friends, we have access to so many great artists, engineers, instrument makers, it's like, man, there's so much content that we could produce that would appeal to music lovers.
Right.
And audiophiles. So we're going to do that with the number one priority being taking care of the artists. Because right now what we're doing with streaming services is artists are they're spending heaps of money creating content, spending their own money, and then handing it to these services who are then making lots of money along with the major labels who are shareholders in these streaming services.
Right.
And the only people that are not benefiting from it are the content providers. And it's not fair. It's not, there's no integrity behind the system. In an altruistic way, I think it would be beautiful if everyone was benefiting, because then it's, wow, the whole world of recorded music is available to anyone with an internet connection and everyone's getting taken care of. If that happened, that would be great. And that's what everybody says. Eventually it'll be there.
Right.
But it's not there yet, and it doesn't look like it's going to be there. And rather than sitting around and complaining about the problem like I'm doing now, I want to try to create a solution,
Right.
At least one for our world, and I really see it as a reimagination of the fan, of what the fan is, and I think it's about changing the mindset of a fan and making them understand that no, you're not just a fan, like one in a huge number whose contribution doesn't matter. You're like a patron of this artist, and whatever you contribute to this artist, you'll get back in content, like kind of Patreon, what Conti's doing with Patreon and this kind of stuff. And I believe that if you can change the way that people think about themselves in that way, then they're going to be more willing to contribute. Because right now they feel like, well, people are going to make records whether I pay for it or not. $9.99 a month is not going to take care of every artist in existence.
Right.
Which is what you have available. It's just the system is not designed to benefit the content providers.
Right. Well, that's very exciting.
That was not your question.
It was a great
Sorry,
answer.
I didn't mean to
it was
dive
it was
into that.
It was a great answer, and we'll look forward to seeing where that goes. I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, I think it's a cool. I mean, if nothing else, it's going to be a gigantic disaster that was a lot of fun.
There you go.
Which is kind of everything we do is kind of has the risk of being that. But
Right. Well, if there's no risk, there's no reward, though.
Right.
There you go. There's a cliche there somewhere. So let's talk a little bit about your process of composing. I'm always interested when I talk to a composer who works with a large ensemble, particularly one that has a lot of improvisation as part of it. How, when you present a new composition to the group, are you bringing in a lead sheet, or do you, horn players typically want to see parts?
Right.
How detailed are your compositions, and how arranged are things?
well, whoever writes the song for the band writes all the parts.
Okay.
So there are my songs, there are Justin's songs, there are Maz's songs. It's like that, And the way that we present it is actually not written. It's demoed. Most of us use Logic, and we just demo all the parts with a MIDI controller or sing or play them on an instrument and email it to everybody in the band, and everybody learns all the parts, not just their own.
Right.
I make sure of that by programming every part in with the same Fender Rhodes sound. So nobody actually knows what the horn lines are or anything, so they learn everything. And then we sit in rehearsal and we play through it, and then there's a million adjustments that are made.
And does everyone just remember their parts then, or
Yeah.
are they scribbling notes as they go? Or
No. They memorize
head
it.
charts, or-
They memorize it before the rehearsal.
So then I have to ask, given again the revolving nature of the collective, what happens the next time somebody comes in that wasn't part of that original session?
It's just like getting thrown into a moving train,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So they get on the train, and if they don't, then they get left behind, and nobody wants that. And
Sure. Do you give them the demo then and say your part is this line, or do they?
I just give them the demo and they learn everything.
Okay.
Because we're constantly changing parts too. I mean, last night we had 2 guitarists and a keyboard player, but in Australia we're going to have 2 keyboard players and a guitar player, and 1 less horn. So people who weren't playing the melody before are going to have to be playing the melody, and, you know. So it's like everybody has to know everything. It's like you treat it like a listener. Like if you're listening to a Beatles song, you sing the melody and then you sing the guitar solo and then you sing the drum fill.
Right.
It's like the you know, it would be silly for a musician to not know the same. I try to do that whenever I'm playing a song. I try to know all the parts. It's, you know, empowering, even if you're just playing something simple.
Right. Right. You've discussed in the past how you tend to start your compositions with a concept, and then you'll come up with either a progression or a rhythm or a riff or something to build off of and sing vocals on, a melody on top of that to get a vocal melody. I'm interested in how you come up with your progressions. Are they things that you look at from a music theory standpoint? Do you say, I've got a sharp 9 chord here, so I'm leading back to this tonic, or is it just totally by ear, or how does that work?
The more time goes on, the less I try to think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the more I just try to hear the next thing, you know, or to hear the emotion or the energy or where it's going, and I think about it more that way. The more abstract I think about music, the better I write. The more technically I think about it, the worse it turns out. You know, I'm a big believer in the idea that music theory comes out of music. It's the explanation of why things work. It's not the formula for things to work, you know.
Right, right. But you're also a big proponent of having enough education to understand what you do a lot of educating yourself. That's a big part of what you're doing. So does that come from a desire to understand what you're doing, or how does that factor into that?
It's just holistic. I don't know how you would say that. Just like, I mean, the word I come back to is like empowerment. You know, the more you know. Was it Reading Rainbow? What was that? The more you know, right?
Something like that, yeah.
It's like, you know, the more you know, the better. I mean, it's kind of like if you say, no, I don't want to learn theory because I don't want it to corrupt my musicality. That's kind of like saying, I don't want to learn how to write English because then it's going to make me less articulate or something. You know, it's like, or it's not going to allow me to say what I really mean if I know more words. It's like, no, man, the more words you know, the more you can say.
Right.
You have the ability to choose what words to use instead of being limited to the few words you know, and it saves time and energy to be able to say, guys, we're going to do a major 7 sharp 5 chord. You play the 3rd, you play the 7, you play the 9, you play the sharp 5. Everybody cool, and it's there. You know, I mean, it saves a lot of time.
Right. Right. So one of your recent albums, Silva, you worked with the Metropole Orchestra. Did you guys do all of the arrangements for the orchestra as well, or how did you work all of that together? That's a big undertaking, getting an orchestral arrangement done especially with a group like yours.
Yes, it was a lot of work. Yeah, I mean, I wrote that suite of music and arranged it as well for the orchestra.
Okay.
And then I went to Berlin and hung out with the conductor for 2.5 very intense days, during which we plugged it all into Sibelius, because I had done it all on Logic, like French horn 1, French horn 2, you know, contrabass clarinet 1, you know, whatever.
Right.
And during that process, Jules Buckley, the conductor, who's amazing and is like my brother, you know, like changed certain things. Like, this will work better this way, blah, 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 blah. So on the record, we say arranged and orchestrated by the two of us. But really, it was like I did it initially, and he made sure that my horrible mistakes were corrected. But also, he also contributed some really beautiful, I mean, you know, it's just one of those things. It's like he knows what he's doing. So
Right.
everything that he touched became better. It made me look like I knew what I was doing.
Yeah, there's a lot involved in orchestrating for an orchestra,
Yeah.
just instrument ranges and what they can comfortably play, and they need to breathe and do things like that.
Right.
That, you know, guitar players and bass players don't necessarily have to.
No, yeah, exactly.
At least not in the context of playing their instrument.
Right, yeah.
So when you're, did you conceive the music initially to have all the orchestration with it? Was that in the
Oh,
back
yeah.
in the back of your head the whole time, and you were writing it as that texture?
Yeah, I asked to customize the orchestra for a sound that I wanted. They granted the request, and then I wrote the music specifically for that instrumentation with my band.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's not like Snarky Puppy with strings. It's like one ensemble.
One ensemble right there.
Yeah.
Right. Very interesting. Well, man, congratulations on all the success. You've had Grammy Award for the most recent album, and of course previous Grammys and things as well, and tours. And it's a real tribute to you and your music that you've been able to do that in a genre that's not totally mainstream pop. You know, I know you call it pop instrumental, but it's you know, coming up with a label for all of the different elements of the things that you combine together, and I think that's very inspiring for a lot of musicians, because
Thank you.
you know, most people see bleakness when they're working in a genre that isn't necessarily, you know, the top 40.
Right. Well, I think it's just about community.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you have a bunch of people doing something creative, it inspires more people to do something creative, and it creates an audience for creative music, which inspires even more people
Right.
to make creative music. And it's like, it's so important. Man, art is so important, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
There's a commitment required there too, because it took you a while. I mean, you guys started,
yeah.
you know, in college and you know, spent years building up that audience and building up the whole thing. So there's a commitment that's required there too.
Yeah, well, there's that joke that it takes 10 years to become an overnight success.
Right.
And for us, I think we won our first Grammy when we were like 11,
There you go.
10 or 11 years old, and no one had heard of us. And then they're like, wow, who's this new band? We're like, we've played every bar in America,
Yes,
you know?
we're an overnight
over the
sensation,
last 10
right?
years, yeah. Yeah, it's a long road, but it's always been fun because the love of music, I think, has been the thing that kind of got us through all those very, very difficult years,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and love for each other too. You know, we're like a family, so those two things together have made a big difference.
Right. So I have to ask before we wrap up, what led you to producing other artists, people like David Crosby? We were discussing that before, and some of the others that you've worked with. Do you look for particular types of artists? Is it someone that connects you, or how does that happen?
I love producing. That's like my favorite thing to do right now. So I mean, I've worked, like right now, this moment, I'm currently working on a record for Eliades Ochoa, who's the guitarist and singer for the Buena Vista Social Club from Cuba. So like a folkloric record, not folkloric, but traditional music.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm working on a kind of straight ahead jazz thing for Alina Yenchibadian, who won the Montreux Vocal Jazz Competition last year. And then I'm working on a record for this singer who's half Swedish, half Thai. That's like a combination of like Bjork and Nine Inch Nails. You know, so for me, it's like I'm interested in all of those kinds of music. So for me to be working with all of them just like makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I feel comfortable as long as I'm not making a recording that has to be like super purist. You know, I couldn't do that anyway. I'm a mutt of so many different things, you know. So for me, that's kind of like where my intention and energy is. And I just started a new band called Bocante. That's like, I'm playing baritone guitar. It's like 3 guitars, lap steel, bass, 3 percussionists, and a singer from the Caribbean island of Guadeloupe who sings in Creole and some French. So for me, it's just like, I just have a lot of interests. So I'm trying to kind of actualize those things while people care. Because maybe in 2 years, nobody's going to want to ever hear anything or see anything by me ever again. So it's like, wow, there's some interest from people. I want to create
Sure. I don't expect that'll be the case.
Well, you never know.
So with all of these different projects with different people around the world, are you working in sessions where bands come together, or are you working remotely, collaborating by sending files? How are you managing all of those things?
It's no, I always work together
Mm-hmm.
with the person. I'm like pretty hands-on as far as production goes. I mean, not overly, but you know, I went to Cuba to do the record with Eliades, and I've been working on those other 2 records in my studio in Brooklyn with the artists. And those records, it's really just kind of me and them, really. A lot of it, you know, 90% of it's just the 2 of us together. So, yeah, I mean, definitely use technology to be pinging ideas back and forth. You know, for Bocante, my new band, I recorded all the music on Logic, emailed it to the singer in Montreal. She recorded all the lyrics and melodies, wrote them and recorded them on Logic, sent it back to me.
Mm-hmm.
We did the whole record by email,
Wow.
which is crazy.
Yeah.
It's like Christmas every time I saw her name in my inbox. I was like, ooh.
Right.
Open it up and it's like a new song.
Right. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, congratulations on all your success, and I don't know how you manage that schedule, man. That's incredible.
Well, I don't know that I do very well. But
We're glad to have you here. Thanks for
Thanks.
stopping by.
Thanks.
Nice to meet you.
likewise, man. Thank you.
And thank you for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute. I'm Mitch Gallagher.